Order of the Ceres City Council on Monday, April 25th, 2016 at 6:01. Can I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember DeRossett.
Here.
Councilmember Lane.
Here.
Councilmember Rhino.
Here.
Vice Mayor Klein.
Here.
And for the record, Mayor Vieira is absent.
And if I could please have you stand for the invocation from Pastor Jeff Hilbert of the Believers Family Church, and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you watch over our city, that you help us to manage our resources wisely. We ask that you open up doors of opportunity for businesses that best meet our citizens' needs. We ask that you protect our protectors as they watch over us and cast lawlessness from our midst. Guide our council to stretch every tax dollar and grant us favor, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have two presentations tonight. The first one is a presentation by Supervisor Jim DeMartini with the county CEO Stan Risen of Stanislaus County on the Focus on Prevention Initiative.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here tonight. Our Chief Executive Officer, Stan Risen, is going to be giving the presentation, but this concerns the Stanislaus County's focus on prevention. And we figure that about 75% of the entire county budget is committed to these problems in dealing with the symptoms. So instead of just dealing with the symptoms, we're going to try and deal with the root causes of homelessness, drug addiction, fatherless homes. And these are the things that causes, down the line, the mental health department to get involved, the sheriff's department, probation, incarceration, health services agency, we're in the welfare department, community services. So we're trying to get ahead of that now and trying to do what we can to keep that person from being out in the street and being homeless, or from becoming addicted to drugs or alcohol or such. So it's a good program. It takes a lot of partners to put something like this on. Government alone is not going to be able to solve this problem by itself. Other people have to get involved in private organizations, churches, faith-based groups, and the like. That's the only way we're ever going to get ahead of this and try and reverse the trend. And we've made great strides for that, as you'll hear tonight. I think it's a bold new program, something that has great potential for success in this area. So I'm going to turn it over to the Chief Executive Officer of Stanislaus County, former council member here too, Mr. Stan Risen.
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. And before I jump into this, my Chief Operations Officer asked me to convey her thanks. As you know, we have probably about $140 million worth of construction projects going on in Ceres right now. And she just wanted me to convey how excellent your staff has been to work with on that project. And I know sometimes staff, not all the positive stuff makes it to you, but I want you to know the county has been very pleased with the interaction and working with your staff, and want to say thank you. I also appreciate you giving us the opportunity to take a few minutes tonight to share with you about our Focus on Prevention initiative. And I have to tell you, this is really more than just an initiative. To me, it is becoming a movement, and it's probably one of the more exciting things that I've seen in my entire career in government, which is getting close to 30 years now. And so I don't have a lot of ask for you tonight, except to ask you to just join us on this journey. And so I'd like to share a little more about it with you. As Supervisor DeMartini shared with you, the county has a budget of just over $1 billion, and probably over 75% of that goes to treating symptoms. I remember Supervisor Withrow, who's here with us tonight and has been intimately involved with Focus on Prevention. I remember when he had first gotten elected to as a county supervisor, and we were bringing an item to him, and he made the comment, "Doggone it, I wish we could spend more of our money treating the disease rather than just always treating symptoms." And that comment resonated with me, and just kind of one of those I tucked away. And then one day I came across some fatherless statistics, and let me just share a few of them with you here this evening. 43% of U.S. children live without a father in the home. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 71% of pregnant teenagers lack a father in the home. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. But it gets worse. 85% of youths in prison grew up in a fatherless home. 90% of homeless and runaway children come from a fatherless home. I remember reading those statistics and thinking, wow, how come I never hear those? Our society never has a discussion about that. And I don't know whether we're afraid it's politically incorrect, whether we're afraid that single moms will not hear the message. Because I have to tell you, I always give the disclaimer, there's no harder job in the world than being a single mother. This is about absentee fathers, about men who failed to meet their parental responsibility and has left the poor mom hanging to raise a family on their own. And it took me back to Supervisor Withrow's comment and says, we've got to find a way to begin having discussions as a community about what's the cause. What are some of the root causes that are driving a lot of the ills that we struggle with? I think if you look at your own budget, you'll realize that a high percentage of your budget goes to treating symptoms of brokenness and of a broken family. And so that was kind of one of the initial roots. And as Supervisor DeMartini shared with you, I've been in government now, like I said, close to 30 years. I came in kind of cynical to government, to be honest. And I'm here to tell you, after 30 years in government, I'm more convinced than ever that government is not the answer. Government can be an important part of the answer. We need to be an important part of the answer, but we can't do this alone. So that was kind of the root of this effort, a movement called Focus on Prevention. When I went to the board, I have to tell you, the Board of Supervisors has been tremendously supportive. You see two of them here tonight as we go out and begin sharing our story. And one of the first things they said when I presented this to them is that this is going to be a generational exercise. We're probably not going to see the real fruits of what we're trying to do, maybe even for 10 years or more. And the fact that they were willing to give us as staff and as a community the freedom to begin laying the seeds of something that may take fruit long after they're out of office was exciting to see. We also realize that if this is going to be successful, it can't be government alone. And so I'm going to share with you, but we've involved 10 sectors in this movement, and we've gone after key influencers from each of those sectors. Finally, we're on a journey, not finally, I got a lot more to say tonight on this slide, is that we've begun taking what we call a results-based accountability approach. And we're starting to ask ourselves a lot of times in government, what does success look like? And then working backwards from there. So in results-based accountability, you figure out what is it you want to be, what is it that success will be. You then develop measurements or accountability things to know if you're making progress. And only then, after you've decided where you want to go and how you're going to measure it, do you begin working on the strategies to get there. And what I've found in most of my time in government is we want to skip those first two steps and we just want to jump into talking about strategies. And consequently, we end up with this kind of bifurcated approach where we're never really even agreed on what it is we're trying to accomplish together. And so part of Focus on Prevention is a commitment to learning and mutual accountability. And why that's important to me is if a program is not producing measurable results, I don't care if it's a 15-year tradition. Maybe it's time to cut it loose and go after supporting with our limited resources those programs that are really making a difference in our community. We started off with 4 focus areas. when we began this initiative. The first was reducing homelessness, strengthening families, investing in children and youth, and reducing recidivism, or the people that are involved in reentry in our criminal justice system. I will tell you, we say our original focus area, because as we've begun this journey, we said we're going to let the community mold and shape this into whatever it wants to be. And one of the things we've realized is this focuses on our problems, these 4 areas. We want to focus on what we want to be. And so I'm going to share with you some result areas that's kind of our new targeted area. I mentioned we've involved 10 sectors. I handed out a brochure that hopefully you have in front of you, but you will see the 10 sectors we are engaging are the business community, education, faith-based, government, health, media, neighborhoods, nonprofits, philanthropy, and arts, sports, and entertainment. I will tell you, some of these sectors are used to working together. The nonprofits and government work together, nonprofits and philanthropy work together. But it's been interesting as we brought all these sectors together, that some of them we've never thought to engage before. We've never had media at the table as a partner. We've never had arts, sports, and entertainment at the table as a partner. And it's exciting as we begin to see each of these sectors starting to own some of these issues and challenges themselves. One of our representatives for the arts sector said, you know, when I first got involved with this, I wasn't sure how it affects me in the arts. And now, she said, I'm in the midst of creating a program at the Gallo Arts Center focused on stories of homelessness that came out of our Homeless Action Council last October. And they're starting to see the way that they can play a community in joining us on this journey. We put together a couple support infrastructures. The first is called a Stewardship Council. We're convinced that if this gets perceived and stays perceived as a county effort, it will fail. If it stays perceived as a government effort, it will fail. But if all 10 sectors of the community will own this, that is powerful. And so the Stewardship Council, that name implies ownership. And so we've selected two key influencers from each of the 10 sectors. They've been meeting since May, I think May or June of last year, and they have developed the overall leadership and support for this effort and come up with 5 result areas that I'll share with you in a moment. That is where we want to try to be as a community. And then this year, they're going to begin focusing on how do we really engage our sector in coming alongside on this journey. So for example, on May 18th, we're going to be holding a faith-based summit to educate every church, pastor, bishop that we can get to attend in the entire Stanislaus County to come for a half day on focus on prevention. So we're doing sector development. We had one with neighborhoods recently. We plan on doing it with the health community, the education community, and so on. We also have a support structure of action councils. We started with homelessness, so we've had a homeless action council meeting since middle of last year, and I will share a little bit of what they've been doing here in a moment. But they're to develop action plans for each focus area and create plans to address the particular challenges. We have some guiding values as part of this effort, and the first one is that there are no others. We were a little concerned with starting with homelessness. While there was a lot of community energy, we were afraid that people would look at this as an us and them discussion. And focus on prevention is about not us and them, but about all of us. I will tell you, whether we're talking homelessness or reducing recidivism, I've had family members that have been homeless. I've had family members that have been involved in the justice system. This isn't a story of us and them. This is a story about all of us and how we come together, all of us, to address our challenges. We approach it with compassion and empathy. This has been a real learning journey for me, even personally, and I think Supervisor Withrow would share even the same, that this facilitator we've hired for this effort has taught me so much about holding my story lightly and learning to listen to the stories of others and to approach them with value and respect and dignity. You know, we all have our stereotypes. If I mention the word homeless, we immediately go to our stereotypes. And yet, when I listen to the stories at the Homeless Summit of people who had lived experience with homelessness, they didn't fit my stereotypes. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But and the last, as I mentioned earlier, this isn't about a giveaway. How do we just increase programs and services? This is about a journey of mutual accountability, not only on those providing the services, but those receiving the services. So after working since last June, the Stewardship Council has developed 4 result areas. And the primary thing that I want to communicate to you tonight is that we are going to ask every sector and every part of our community to embrace these 4 result areas as their own. My goal is one day to walk in the city of Ceres and see a banner that says focus on prevention in these 4 result areas. And you're examining your own programs and services on this results-based accountability to say, what are we doing as a city of Ceres to help our Stanislaus County achieve results in these 4 areas? The first one is that our families are healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. The second, that our families are supported by strong and safe neighborhoods and communities. The third, that our children and young people are getting a first-rate education from cradle to career. One of the things we've learned on this journey is that you learn to read up until the 3rd grade, and you read to learn from the 3rd grade on. But did you know that over 70% of our 3rd graders still do not know how to read? And what that does is it puts them behind on this entire learning journey because they weren't prepped and ready to hit kindergarten, ready to go. And so this education is going to be an important element in our result areas. And finally, that our families are participating in and supported by a healthy economy. Let's see, moving on. This, and I know it's going to be hard to read on the screen, but this is basically the work of the Homeless Action Council. We've had over 100 people meeting on a regular basis. At any given meeting, we probably have 60 or so people, but we've had well over 100 unique individuals involved in developing this homeless action plan. It follows, you'll see our results-based kind of accountability on the left side where we figure out what is the result we're trying to accomplish, how are we going to measure that we're making a difference to get there, and then finally, what are the strategies? And so we've identified 5 strategies as it relates to homelessness. The first is coordinated access. What I found when I first, in fact, Supervisor Withrow came to me a couple of years ago and said, what are we doing about some of our homeless challenges? And I realized I didn't know a whole lot. And what I went out and found is that we probably have well over 100 programs and services for homeless people in our community. But consistently what I heard is that everybody's operating in their silos and doing their own thing. In fact, I heard of programs, I heard of a short-term program that deals with basic issues like anger management and finances and all those kinds of things. And then I heard of this long-term supportive housing program over here, 18 months of transitional housing or longer. But what I found out is under HUD's definition, if you participated in the 30-day program, you're no longer eligible to participate in the long-term supportive housing. But you and I know if you went straight into long-term supportive housing and didn't figure out how to deal with your anger management and you put a hole in the wall, you're back on the street again. Those were examples of some of the silos we saw. And so our goal is, and it's been exciting, it's like I've had people tell me we've just been waiting for someone to come along and help provide us leadership to pull us all together so that we can start working together in a coordinated fashion. We are also looking at creating a coordinated access site so that we can get all the providers in the same building together. And I vision a day where we have a place for showers, a place for lockers if people want to go work for the day cleaning up the freeway or other parts, maybe even a place for their animals to stay for the day while we find work for them to do. So we're really excited about the potential that this adds. The second area is supportive services. I've heard anecdotally that you can get up to 25 meals a week at Graceda Park. What we have is we have a lot of well-intentioned people wanting to do good things, but sometimes we're tripping over each other or we're just treating symptoms. And our goal is to get even those providing supportive services working in the same direction and in a coordinated fashion. The third area is what excites me as part of our strategies, and that's engagement. As we listen to the Homeless Summit, the people with lived experience, in almost every case, it wasn't a program or service that made a difference in someone's life. It was a person who took a personal interest in them. We heard a lady share that she had been living in the graveyards. She figured it was the safest place to be because nobody will come into the graveyards at night. And a mental health clinician reached out to her every day, and at first she wouldn't even talk to him. And as he kept going day after day and building a relationship with her, she finally was able to start accepting services. And here she was in front of 500 people sharing her story about how she went from being formerly homeless to where she's at today. Why? Because somebody cared. I have a Facebook friend named Randy who works for Telecare who was homeless, and it was a police officer who was arresting him that said, "I see so much more potential in you," that made a difference in his life. And it goes on and on. It's that engagement. It's that taking a personal interest. And it's not expecting the homeless to come to us, but it's us going to them and building that relationship and pulling them into the services we have to offer. And then housing. Toby knows this is something that the city managers and planning directors, CBDG directors, and I are beginning to tackle along with some of our nonprofits. But we have over 21,000 housing shortage when it comes to affordable housing in this county. And that affects the entire continuum. And it's going to be a tough problem to tackle. But the only way we're going to tackle is by doing it together. So a little bit about, and I'll try to wrap up here pretty quick and take any questions you have. Our 2016 priorities is we want to continue implementing these strategies we've developed now for homelessness. We want to begin organizing our communities around one of these 4 result areas. We figure we probably can't tackle all 4 at the same time, but we can begin tackling 1 or 2 of them. We want to begin the development of data and other infrastructure. I can tell you, I've been in government a long time, and we measure a lot of stuff, but every time I ask a basic, simple question like recidivism, I can't get a straight answer because we haven't been measuring the right stuff. And so we're going to really focus on data development so that when it comes to measuring the effectiveness of programs, we know we're putting our money where it'll make a difference. And then, as I shared with you, we're very interested in starting to begin the education down through the sectors so that we can get us all together. Let me end with just one quick story, and then I'll take any questions you have. But my wife and I were on Pinecrest Lake the summer before last, and we were rowing kayak. And we decided we were going to go to the other side of the lake. Sounds simple, right? So we started rowing the kayak to the other side of the lake, and I noticed the kayak was going like this. And my wife finally said, "Stan, where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to the rock over there. Where are you going?" She said, "Well, I'm going to the beach over there." And I thought, that just describes our service delivery system. We have a general idea that we want to go to the other side of the lake, but because we've never all come together and learned how to row together effectively, we're not very efficient or effective. Our goal, and focus on prevention, is to get everyone, every church, every school, every city council, every newspaper, every sports team, get all of us rowing in the same direction with the same objective, and I'm convinced we can make a difference. So thank you for your time this evening. I know it went a little long, but be happy to answer any questions you have.
Does anybody on the council have questions for Mr. Risen? Is there anybody in the public? Stan, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Now we have a presentation from the Ceres Youth Commission, Chelsea and Jasmine.
Chelsea Harris, and I've been a member of Ceres Youth Commission for 4 years now.
My name is Jasmine Soroya, and I've been a member of Ceres Youth Commission for 6 years. So part of being a CYC member is giving back to our community. Last month, 8 of us got together to clean up the River Bluff Park area. And this Sunday, April 30th, we will be doing a $1 face painting as a fundraiser to raise money for the Ceres Recreation Scholarship Fund. And we will be at Roding Heights at 11 a.m. right after the Tiny Tot baseball game.
We are also in the process of updating our Ceres Youth Commission emblem so that it encompasses our values of unity, community, and leadership. And due to the fact that the majority of our members are seniors graduating this year from high school, most likely going to community college or universities, well, not that close here. So we want to increase membership, hopefully through advertisement and scheduling presentations at local junior high and high schools so that we are able to encourage our youth to join in and give back to their own community as a way of saying thank you for caring for us so much. And this also helps them in preparation for applying for colleges and gaining volunteer experience for perhaps employment. And that is all. We
Thank
have
you.
lots of homework.
Does anybody on the council have any questions? Anybody in the public? Thank you, young ladies.
All right. Thank you.
Now we'll move on to citizens' communications. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the City Council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes for expression of non-agenda items. Matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public. However, California law prohibits the City Council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Citizens are entitled to address the City Council on any agenda item subject to the 5-minute provision. Is there anybody that would like to address the City Council?
Leonard Shepard, 2841 Fowler Road. Last Thursday, I had the honor of taking part in the graduation of the rookie school in our fire department. I know Vice Mayor Klein was there, and I think I saw Toby Wells there, and Mr. Westbrook. It was marvelous. Those young men completed all this, I don't know how many hours of training they went through and graduated, and they got their helmets and they got their assignments. Now, they're official on duty in our stations, and that is just wonderful. I knew how they felt because 53 years ago, I graduated from a rookie school in the fire department, and it was nothing like that. They gave us our certificates and said, go back home and go to work. So this was a lot nicer, and I was proud to be a part of it. But here's the thing. You now have, as city council and staff of the city and the fire department, to figure out how to keep those people and how to keep progressing and adding more people until we reach our full, which is going to be a lot. You got a lot to work to do, and I know that your firefighters, your chief, and the battalion chiefs are all going to be working with you the next 23 months. So all I can say is good luck and go for it. And get us there and keep our fire department growing till we get the maximum that we need, which is 4 on an engine and 6 on a truck. Keep that in mind. That's what we need to have. And that'll be If we can achieve that, together we achieve will mean something. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Good evening, Wes Stamper, 1625 Linden Drive. Ceres Relay for Life's coming up this Saturday. It is a 15-hour event held at Ceres High School. Starting at 8 a.m., we have what we call our Survivor Breakfast. It's going to be cooked by the Ceres Lions Club. We invite all cancer survivors to come on out, enjoy a free breakfast, followed by the survivors. Participants are welcome to eat until there's no longer any more food. Our opening ceremony is going to begin at 9 a.m. Those that have been involved with Relay for Life, it's a beautiful opening ceremony. We have a family that we dedicate our Relay for Life for. I'll get to that in a minute, but there's a dove release that we do and an opening lap for that family. Every hour we have a theme lap, and our participants dress up to that theme. It's a lot of fun to go out and see. Those that haven't joined, if you just want to go out, it's basically the Relay for Life event is like the little street fair. You go out there and all the teams are offering raffles or tri-tip sandwiches for sale or something like that. So I encourage everybody to come out, check out what we have going on out there. At 8 o'clock is our Luminaria ceremony. This is the real somber moment of Relay for Life. All the lights are shut off in the stadium, and a slideshow presentation is given with a list of names of family members who we walk in honor or in memory of. We have what we call Luminaria bags that everybody decorates throughout the year and that day, and we fill them up with sand to keep them from blowing over, and we put a candle or a glow stick in them, and we line the track and the stands throughout, and with all the lights off and all those bags lit up that represent an individual who has battled or is battling cancer. It's a very, very moving and emotional time, and I encourage, if you have that hour, that would be the hour to go to really pay respect to those that have gone through this horrible disease. The family that we have, unfortunately, I hate to say chosen, but a few days ago it was brought to my attention of a young woman who I had grown up with in my church and since forgotten about, and I heard about her losing her 2-year-old daughter to an undetected leukemia last June, and we dedicate this relay in memory of Chloe Gustin. So again, I invite you guys all to come out Saturday and join us for the Relay for Life. So we're set up, we walk around the track throughout the 15 hours, and all of the tents and events are staged lining that track.
I see nobody else, so with that, I'm going to move on to appointments to boards and commissions. We have none. Conflict of interest declaration. Is there anybody on the council that has conflict of interest? Okay, with that, moving on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion, unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or the public for a specific consideration. Otherwise, the recommendation of the staff will be accepted and acted upon by a roll call vote. Is anybody on the council would like anything agenda item pulled? See none. Anybody in the public would like to see an agenda item pulled? With that, I'll bring it back to the council and entertain.
Move to approve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Can I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember DeRossett,
Yes.
Councilmember Lane,
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Klein.
Yes.
Motion passes 401.
With that, I see No unfinished business, public hearing, new business, discussion items. We have one item on the discussion calendar tonight, item number 11, discussion of a draft project list for the expenditure plan of 2016 countywide half-cent sales tax measure.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. I'll just do a couple introduction comments, and then Daryl will handle the bulk of the presentation this evening. As council is aware, we recently had a presentation from StanCog staff on the framework and the outline that, as approved by the StanCog board, for a half-cent sales tax measure that is proposed on the ballot for November of this year. That proposed expenditure plan was broken down between the number of different categories, local projects being one of the biggest areas of that, where 50% of the funding would be designated to local projects. So this evening, what we're looking for is just direction on the process that we're using to select those local projects for road maintenance. And then Daryl will walk you through that process and have a discussion of that item. The regional project component, which is another significant piece, that will follow at a later date. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Jordan.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Tonight we're going to do a quick review of our pavement analysis that we do through the city. You've been through this maybe 3 years ago, so we're going to kind of quickly walk you through the program that we use here at the city to evaluate the status of our pavement program and roll this into the half-cent sales tax that Toby was talking about and how this complements that. Rolling here. Okay. Great, thanks for your patience. Our pavement management tool here is a cost-effective mechanism that we use to determine the level of health of our pavement sections throughout the city and how to maintain those different streets and roads. It determines what condition that they're in, what repairs are needed to keep them in a healthy manner, and how much money is required depending on which type of measure we use to work on these assets. If you look throughout our whole city, the value of our streets is pretty phenomenal. We're talking about $170 million worth of assets within our inventory that our Public Works Department maintains for us. They're broken up into different classifications, functional classes, arterials, collectors, residential streets. As you can see, the majority of our pavement sections reside in the residential streets throughout the city, almost 100 centerline miles worth of that. As most of you are aware of, the StanCog expenditure plan has come out, and it's been discussing this 25-year half-cent sales tax measure that's going to be coming out in November for the public to vote on. And in that measure, the half-cents is going to be broken down in multiple different areas. Each agency will identify which specific streets and or roads that will be prioritized to repair or to refurbish through this program. And I do want to emphasize that this is just the local streets that we're talking about tonight. The regional projects is going to come at a later date, which the public and council can weigh in on, determine what's most important to us. The proposed expenditure plan breaks down like this. Half of the money is going to be going to our local streets and roads, about 50%. The others is broken down into regional projects, which is not for tonight, 28% traffic management, 10% like traffic signals and what have you, and bike pedestrian facilities throughout the city. This is kind of a breakdown just to give you a more detailed look at how much money we're looking at for Ceres and our local street program. About 6.4% of that total collection, tabulating to about $30.5 million over 25 years. That's $1.2 million per year, which would go towards roads and streets. The other portions, the 5, 10, and 28%, a little more detail on that. Bicycle and pedestrian projects, a little over $100,000 a year, providing for safer bicycle and pedestrian routes. Traffic management projects, such as upgrades to our intersections, road widening, and signalization. That's almost $250,000 a year that we would get through this sales tax. And the regional projects are there to promote and relieve congestion throughout the county, and that's something that you as a council would weigh in on here, determine what's in our best interest. A little further detail, the breakdown of that 7% goes to rail, point-to-point transit and community connections, which is not a focus of tonight, but that's where some of those monies would go. As far as our streets and roads go, here's some of the situations that we, or I should say Mr. Damas in Public Works deals with on almost a weekly basis. Here's how we evaluate some of the different types of issues with our pavement sections throughout the city. On the top left, you'll see that's a typical alligator cracking type of section that we see. Block cracking below that on the left side center, and some distortions, usually near the intersections where the big rigs will be slowing down, putting on their brakes, and sliding that pavement up into different lumps. In the center, you see longitudinal or transverse cracking, patches throughout the city on different potholes that we've maybe addressed or what have you. Some rutting and some weathering or raveling situations you'll also see on the bottom right. Here's some example for alligator cracking. Here's a low one on the first slide that popped up. As you see, it progressively is going to get worse to a moderate, and then to a very high issue, which this is basically a failed pavement, which we'd have to go in and reconstruct. So how is this condition measured? Currently, our PCI is measured at an average of 64. That 64 is just below the good and excellent. It puts us at an at-risk level for some of our pavements. The good news is the majority of our pavements are in somewhat of a good condition, but there are some that need to be addressed as far as rehabilitation. This is an interesting slide here, which basically tells a story of what your index is on the left versus the time and years of the life of a pavement. As you can see in the top in the green, that's fairly new pavement in which some very inexpensive measures can be taken with slurry seals of some type to extend the life of those. Once they get beyond that, start to see some cracking and what have you, then we're looking at some thin overlays, which is a bit more expensive. And then some of the worst, you'll see the thick overlays, and all the way down to that really poor alligator cracking that we saw earlier in reconstruction, and that's very costly. Our current PCI condition in 2016, like I said, the good news is that the majority of our pavements are in a good condition. 29% of them are at some type of risk, and 15% need to be addressed in some fashion, either with some type of a cape seal or some type of a overlay. Again, a little bit more breakdown for you on our arterials, which are our main thoroughfares, Mitchell, Whitmore type of streets, Hatch. And then you'll see our collectors amidst the residentials there at the end, which is the majority of our pavement sections throughout the city. Again, here's another interesting slide that just tells you from excellent down to very poor the costs to fix these roads. If we are able to put the money together with this tax measure and try to tackle things in the early years while they're still in the good condition to fair, the cost is fairly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, from $4 to about $15 a square yard to fix these types of roads. But as you can see, if we're unable to address these roads or put any money or maintenance into them, they can fall down to a very poor, to very poor, from $15 to $90 per square foot for reconstruction. So you can see the dynamics from $4 a square yard to $90 a square yard is tremendously different and very costly. Therefore, what we're trying to do is address a lot of these in the early stages, extend the lives of these payments, and save the city millions of dollars in maintenance fees and costs. A As far as road selection, I passed out some lists of some streets for council to look at tonight. Our pavement management program has evaluated and tabulated our inventory of streets and needed repairs. We have circulated this list with our streets department and public works to coordinate and identify locations of priority. Tonight, staff requests your input and direction to send this information to StanCog as a template and a guideline only to plan our future road improvements if this tax measure passes. Any questions that I can answer for you tonight?
So this has nothing to do with the service road interchange that we're,
That is correct.
Zero.
That's correct. That's more of a regional project. We're not going to
Right.
discuss those tonight.
and then that said that only 28% of the regional projects
That is correct, of the overall bucket.
of the
money.
overall, so, okay. Well, I like how we're being proactive. I know we've been heavy on this. I know our city manager over the last number of years with the Mitchell Road and all the sealing that we were doing and stuff to keep those roads up to par. Is the money that we're getting, because on that one slide where it talked about the dollar figure, I think we get 6% of X amount of dollars, which comes out to X amount of, is that our fair share? Do you think that's what we should be getting?
It's based on revenue and sales tax. So it's a sales tax measure, so that's our percentage of the sales tax revenue on a countywide basis. So there was a decision made by the policy board of what factor to use. There was a conversation about whether it should be road mileage or any of those, but it is a sales tax measure, so it made the most logical sense to apportion those monies back on the basis of how they're being paid. So 6.36% is our actual share of what we're contribute on a sales tax basis to the overall total pie of money.
Right. The only thing the thought that I would have is that big, long stretch that we have down Mitchell Road, and again, so that obviously is gonna be resurfaced at one point in time. Those dollars, it just seems like, could it be a little bit more than what we're getting, or is it just based on?
Well,
the
it's
sales
just based on revenue. That's the apportionment of the total bucket is based on the revenue, our fair share of revenue. The idea of a Mitchell Road, which has a regional component, is now into that pot of everybody fighting for that 28% of regional projects, where, priority for us really is the Service Mitchell interchange, but Mitchell Road would be one of those that would probably score very well in the grand scheme of things, Hatch as well as regional connectivity points, but there's, go down the whole list of the county, there's a number of those that have similar situations. So that's where, for us, it probably makes more sense to focus those on our local funds, but as we indicated in the staff report, we also have other funding sources that we're using for those major arterials, primarily our federal funds, which is RSTP and CMAQ. We try to focus those funds on those other arterials as best we can so that we can stretch these local fund dollars as far as possible, because we can only apply those federal funds to these arterials. We can't necessarily apply them to some of the local roads.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I guess then, I did see the staff report that you did mention there's other funding for those sources. However, we're gonna still be at the table when we start looking at this regional, because I think, when you look at Mitchell and Hatch Road, I think we take a huge impact for this county. And I would hope that that would certainly be something that, when we go to the table, that I think we should hold our feet down on, and because this may be the only opportunity.
The challenge, Will, is everyone's got the same, every city has a similar argument, and you're talking about some big regional projects as well, 132, the North County Corridor, the South County Corridor. Those are all fighting for that piece of the pie. And again, the conversation at the policy board, Mr. Klein could speak to this, was, how this pie is being divided was not an easy decision. If you remember from previous efforts in 2006, the regional projects was more like 60% of this. And there was more money to spread around, but again, through efforts and two failed attempts and the polling data indicate what resonates with the voters who are going to pass on this, or are going to vote on this. For it to pass, it's got to be heavily weighted towards the local projects, and that's really what resonated with them. So that's why that pie for the regional project and IER, potential for getting additional funding for those other roadways gets smaller, because we've shifted it to the local roads, which is again what the polling data has indicated has the best chance of success in this measure.
Yeah, I understand that, but if there's gonna be an argument with other cities saying that they got bigger issues than we do, then maybe we need to change some of our routes to non-truck routes.
That's something that we consider, yet again, from the regional perspective of that pot of money, the most likely argument for us really in terms of highest priority would be Service and Mitchell interchange. So we have funding sources already identified for Mitchell Road and Hatch Road. They're already built into our public facilities fees, so we have a dedicated funding source there. Whereas Service Mitchell, that's a much longer project, and getting regional funding for that is a higher priority for us in that it facilitates our ultimate economic development goals versus, Hatch and Mitchell, which is in essence built out. So that's the play out. But the next conversation on regional projects will be a very interesting and very, we'll say a battle, because it will be I trust and promise that we will be very involved in that conversation, but there's not enough money to go around for everybody's regional needs.
Well, and I can make a comment on that because I know at the StanCog meeting we had last week, they wanted to take STIP money from the North County Quarter and transfer it over to the 132 project to basically have that thing fully funded for the first phase. So with that being said, and then they want to take some of the regional money that they get back, STIP money, and pay it back to North County Quarter to get that doing. There was a lot of discussion about, the regional projects and stuff, but I know in the past, since I've been on the StanCog board, and this half-cent sales tax was there, we talked about, what's going to help pass this measure. Well, one of the things was that the feedback they were getting was they wanted the ACE train revenue eliminated from this half-cent to sales tax because it didn't fare too well in polling and different things like that. But the other thing they wanted was with the regional project, and the push was for the Service Mitchell Road interchange to be included back into a regional project. So I've been, talking to Ms. Parks, which is a StanCog director now, about trying to get assurance that Mitchell Road and Service Road will be included in a regional project. And I know that the Turlock mayor, he wants the South County Quarter, put in there. And, they've already got diagrams for that. And they're working out with Newman and Patterson of how that's going to transpire all the way to I-5. So, I'm diligently lobbying for Service and Mitchell Road interchange to be included in the regional projects. I had a discussion with Mr. Wells early today because that's one of the things that I do want to make sure that we do get on the agenda for regional projects. So.
I remember when I sat on StanCog for the last couple of years, and Mr. DeMartini was there with Board of Supervisors, and I just remember that there was an issue with what happened in Turlock because of the half-cent sales tax. They weren't part of, if it passed, that program. I guess, and again, to say, and be stingy, I guess, that what I'm afraid of is that because now they're getting shovel-ready, obviously they are over there in Turlock, that we might be that one group that's missed, and that we'll just kind of hold off and wait. This Mitchell Road Service interchange is huge for us, I think, for our city. And, I just totally believe this, at least as one person, is that that's something that we're going to have to stand up for and say, listen, we're either going to be part of this, or maybe we're not going to be part of it.
The decision has to be made in the next month. The project list, in order for this to have a chance of passing in the next month to 2 months, the entire project list will have to be approved by the StanCog Policy Board so that we begin the outreach. This program fails miserably if we don't have a very detailed list of exactly what this program is funding. So that decision point will be made sooner rather than later. This won't be one of those where, trust us, we'll figure it out later. That decision has to be made in the very near future so that all of the data can be put together and all of the expenditure plan can be detailed out, because the next step in this process is the outreach, where people go out and educate and communicate what's in the plan, what it pays for, what it doesn't pay for. So that decision on what is included in there will be made in the very near future, and that will be brought back to council.
So the last time when this failed, I believe it was City of Oakdale. I believe that was the area. But yet everywhere else it seemed to pass okay. So, and we had the regional projects on there at that time, more so than what we're looking at today, which I don't disagree with this. I know we have to be able to maintain our roads and that sort of thing. However, I don't know if I buy the argument completely that it's got to be from the last time. I mean, I think the regional that wasn't on Oakdale's is the reason why it didn't pass over there.
Well, I do know that StanCog has done a tremendous amount of outreach with Oakdale and the other communities where it didn't poll very well and where it failed last time. And it wasn't just Oakdale, there was other communities where it didn't do as well. So they have done a
That was the bigger community.
Correct, but they've done a tremendous amount of outreach to determine exactly what it is. And it wasn't just, regional project. There were some local projects that were not communicated that have been identified as key projects for getting Oakdale interested in. There's a few streets in their downtown, so they're making sure, and that's what this effort that we're doing tonight is all about, is making sure that any of those streets that have a particular local appeal are getting included in the plan so that we can all point to and say, yes, that street's included. It's going to be done in year 3. That type of thing, because that's one of the things that was revealed afterwards of what some of the constraints were from Oakdale. Again, the overall percentage, Mr. Klein can again point to, this apportionment layout was not something that was gotten to easily. This took several meetings at StanCog, and the city managers wrestled with this for about 3 months, trying to get something that everybody could agree on, because everybody's needs are a little bit different. So it was trying to find that best balance to meet the most of our needs, because at the end of the day, the regional projects, there's probably $2 billion worth of regional project needs, and there's allocated $268 million out of this. So you can't meet them all. And the same thing, even from the local streets and roads, we need about $2.2 million to get us whole, to be able to maintain where we're at. And we're going to get about 1.2. So again, there's balances in this whole thing of what is the best interest of our residents to be able to provide for our local streets and roads and balance those regional project needs and make sure that we can leverage these funds with other funds. And that's really one of the key pieces to the whole picture, is being able to leverage a self-help county so that we can go after other funding sources to leverage our local dollars. And the beauty of this sales tax measure is it's 100% local, meaning the state can't touch it. One of the few funding sources that is ours, and the county can't touch it.
Well, and I'd like to reiterate
The
what
state can't
Mr.
touch it.
Wells said, is because, being on the StanCog for the last couple of years, basically it brings in about 65% of the revenue is locally controlled. And I guess the last measures had like less than 50% was local control. And I will say it out loud, and Supervisor DeMartini can probably vouch for it. There was at least one person on the StanCog board. They wanted to take some of that local control away and give it to a few other projects. But what everybody was at the table was told was that taking that much away from local control, the measures won't pass, because that's what a lot of people in the polling wanted, was a local control, that the cities can be a self-help communities and do what they want with it. So when the bottom line came back, we went back to what you see here in front of you as far as the approval of the expenditure plan of giving, local streets and roads 50%. One person wanted to take that down to 46%. And, wanted to put Ace Train back in there and do a little bit more for Dial Ride and different other projects. And not specifically Dial Ride, but at the end of the day, everybody agreed that this is the best way to do it, so we're all self-help, that we can have more local control so we can fix what we needed to fix. And, I think we're in a good position, better position than some cities, is because we don't have any of those roads that are in dire needs of repair, where we're going to have to dig up 4 to 6 inches and relay it. So I think, we're going in the right direction. My big concern is, and I do agree with Councilmember DeRosset and Councilmember Lane, that we got to make sure that we have service in Mitchell Road as a regional project. We got to have that as part of it. Otherwise, we're defeating our purpose of everything we need, to get Mitchell Ranch, built and things like that. I mean, we're defeating the whole purpose of everything. So, any other questions, comments? I'll open it up to the public. None? Bring it back for direction for staff. I mean, the only thing I would say is going over this list, you know, hopefully we're spending our money wisely. And you know, it looks like we have a good mix of overlays and things like that. So, you know, we're not just doing the cheapest thing we are right now, so.
So we need to make a motion for this?
No, it's just a direction item. This doesn't require council action. We just want to make sure that you're aware of where we're at. Our next step is submitting this information to to StanCog. They'll assemble this information in a full package. And that'll take care of the 65%, and then the next piece will be coming back with the regional project conversation. So
I think
I saw the head nods.
Unless anybody disagrees, I think
We'll
we're good
continue
with it.
moving in that direction.
Okay, so moving on. Council referrals. Any council member that would like to have an item placed on a future agenda?
You know, I keep getting asked about this tow truck bill, and I can't answer it, Toby.
We made a mistake, the simple answer. We sent a bill out before we should have. We didn't communicate internally very well. We are bringing an item back on May 9th to clarify that program, but it was an internal mistake that was made on our behalf, and we'll fix it.
Okay, thank you.
With that, I'll be moving on to reports. Mayor's not here, so I have nothing to report. Councilmember Rhino?
Nothing.
Councilmember Lane?
I'll be attending legislative action days on Wednesday, then I have a board meeting on Thursday. And then let's see, we got the street fair coming up too. Everybody should be ready and willing to get out there for the parade. I think starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? So I think this is the first time it's been back for like 12 years, I think it's been. And the other thing is, I think there's a possibly, 100 entries. I'm hearing pretty close to that, so it ought to be a good parade. Actually starting down on Moffett and Acorn is actually the start of it, and it'll go down Moffett to Whitmore, and there'll be the viewing area, stage area, I guess, there in front of the, used to be the bank, what is it now, the Western, there you go, urgent care. Anyway, that's where it'll be. So anyway, I know you're busy with that and really excited to have that back. So put it on your calendars. Let's hope for good weather and a great event.
Councilmember DeRosa?
Relay for Life, again, Mr. Stamper, thank you for attending tonight, and it's a very important thing, and appreciate the efforts by you and the other people on the committee. Fantastic. Can Mr. Stamper add one more thing? Sure.
Sure.
Why not?
Since I'm replacement, I'll let you.
This is actually a pretty big deal for us, but Bronco Winery donated one of their used vehicles, and we're going to raffle that off, and that'll be at 9 p.m. at our Relay for Life. Tickets are only $5, or you can get 6 for $20. Again, it's a used vehicle, but a perfect, vehicle for a teenager or a single mother or something of that nature. It's a 2008 Chevy Equinox, I believe. So you don't have to be present to win, but show up to the event and purchase some tickets.
Thank you.
Mr. Wells?
Just a couple quick items. Councilmember Rhino brought this to my attention to remind me that she saw a different type of vehicle on her street a week or so ago, and it was a street sweeper with the city emblem on it. So this council approved in the current budget the purchase of a street sweeper, and so we have started that process of shifting over from a contract basis to city crews doing that. They have started kind of full-time doing that earlier this month. They're still kind of working out little bugs here and there, getting used to the route, finding where there's basketball hoops in the street and where there's tree limbs that need to be trimmed, and lots of those little details. But we're so far so good. So that's something, a good positive to report, and feeling like we're getting really good feedback from our streets crew because they've got a little bit better ownership of what their challenges they're seeing, and we're able to kind of generate some more attention to some of those areas that need attention that we weren't really getting that feedback from the contract basis. So far so good. We'll continue to keep you updated as that process goes through. I'm sure there'll be some wrinkles and bumps in the road. It's kind of the nature of that business. Secondly, just a reminder, on May 9th here in the Community Center will be a Valley Business Forum sponsored by the Alliance. It's 7:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. If anybody's interested, we'll go ahead and send something out to get that on your calendars. And that's it for me.
City Attorney, since we have a fill-in.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. Good evening, council members. As some of you may know, I am replacing temporarily, just for tonight, your regular city attorney, Tom Hallinan, who couldn't make it. I do work with Churchwell White, the law firm that represents the city as city attorney. I am one of the deputy city attorneys, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I normally cover planning commission meetings, so I am familiar with your planning staff, but it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Dean.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Westbrook.
Just a reminder, as has been mentioned, the street fair is coming up. The Ceres Chamber of Commerce is also raffling off tickets for a brand new 2016 Ford F-150 truck. $100 a ticket. They're, some may assume a little bit on the high side, but there's only 650 sold for a brand new pickup. So you can stop by the chamber office and get those, or get them at the street fair.
Mr. Jordan.
Just a couple of projects to remind folks around the local community what's going on. Mitchell Road is the overlay is finally coming back online after the weather's come back. So next Monday through Wednesday evening, we'll be grinding and paving and putting down the new pavement. So if you want to join us, Mr. Klein will be out there around midnight, 2 in the morning. So I'd love to have you out there. And also Whitmore is continuing to be constructed. Pavement's going down this week, leveling courses with a new final level course by first of next week.
And I might just join you because I know I asked Mr. Wells, so if you're bringing coffee, I just might do that.
Deal. Thank you.
Battalion Chief Scully.
Thank you. Just a couple things that the fire department wants to mention, show appreciation to the council and to the citizens of Ceres as well that have been going on. You may have noticed the last couple weekends and the next couple weekends, there's been fire trucks parked out at Roding Heights Park. We've been looking forward every year to helping the recreation department out with the Tiny Tots program, with the approval of the city, the fire management staff and the city. So I know the guys look forward to doing that. April 16th, the fire department personnel also participated in our annual MDA fundraiser event, which this year, with the support of, again, the city and the fire management staff, broke the record again for fundraising. It was well over $16,000, which is, for our size of an agency, to raise that much money is to be accommodated to. Captain Joe Spanny for our agency, was the one who headed it up and did a great job this year again. And lastly, 14 months ago, as you're aware, we started the planning phases to accept the SAFER grant for the 6 firefighters that Mr. Shepard mentioned. Last 30 days, they've been training, very rigorously training. And then just yesterday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, their first shift began, which also facilitated the reopening of Fire Station 3 at Service and Crows Landing Road. So we're proud to see the stations reopened again for service for at least the next 2 years. So that was it. Thank you.
And if I can say thank you for what you did helping the firefighters go through their training, because I was there for their graduation and you were the one in charge of it, so thank you. Mr. Collins. Jeremy. Mr. Hallaham. Bettina. Supervisor DeMartini. Okay, with that, I will adjourn our meeting and we will report to closed session. Okay.